Today I'd like to welcome Jill because okay, so one more question while this is already messed up. And it's Aspen Clean Candle Company or Aspen Clean Candle.
Just Aspen Clean Candle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Today, I would like to welcome Jill Kosdrosky to the show. She is the founder of Aspen Clean Candle. Jill, welcome.
Thank you, Brandy. So nice to be here.
It's very nice to meet you.
You as well.
So your company is honestly, you're the only one I've found that actually offers candles fragranced solely with essential oils. So often I feel like I do a Google search for this and it'll come up and it'll claim that the candles are fragranced with essential oils. But then, of course, when I click on the site and kind of dive deeper, that's just simply not true.
Right.
Now, I would definitely like to talk about that and go ahead and bring this up to everyone listening, that you also offer a line of synthetic fragrance candles as well. And these are phthalate free and clean fragrances. So I'd like to talk about both.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, I totally agree with you. That's part of why I started the company. Is I couldn't find candles that I could confirm were safe, or at least clean. And I think we'll probably get into the definitions of some of the, different terms and words that are thrown around a little bit, sometimes haphazardly, actually. But yeah, I couldn't find candles outside of the realm of, soy blend in quotes, or, all natural something. And I knew they weren't, right? And as you try to get into what are the ingredients, it's really hard to find. And most candle companies don't disclose it for that reason, because they know they're not using the best ingredients in their candles. So yeah, I mean, long story short, I was having a really hard time finding anything that I could trust. There are a few companies out there, very few and far between, but I just really wanted to produce my own line, know that I knew what was in them, that I could control that. And I do, as you said, a line of essential oil only with the soy wax. And then I have others that are essential oils with some of the clean, phthalate-free synthetic scents, but I fully disclose that. So, people can dive deeper if they want into the actual sourcing of those companies and things like that. And I'm perfectly fine. I mean, I even tell you where I source it from, so you can do additional research. But yeah, I started really in the essential oil side of things, but then over time, I realized that some of the essential oils really don't break down or combust well enough to put in a candle. And it can actually be harmful to burn some essential oils, right? So that's why I started looking towards some alternatives in the safer synthetic arena.
Right. And
yeah.
Do you mind diving a little bit deeper into that about what you mean? Because I feel so often we hear the word essential oils and we think safe, and that's not true, both when it comes to skincare and then also when it comes to candles.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, just, my goodness, just yesterday, I was doing some more tests with my Christmas line that I'm going to be launching in the next few weeks, which is a lot of cinnamon and a lot of peppermint. And I'll tell you what, when you get those oils in your eyes or your mucous membranes, which I accidentally did yesterday, yeah, they don't feel really safe when they're on your skin and burning. But that's the essence of essential oils, is they are naturally derived from plants, and they're not necessarily safe for, skin contact or mucous membrane or eye or inhalation. And, to your point, something like a citrus base, like a limonene is a chemical that's found naturally in, orange peels, lemon peels, grapefruit, that type of thing. Natural element of an essential oil. But when it's mixed with ozone, or it's combusted and it interacts with ozone, you end up with formaldehyde. So, I really don't use natural citrus scents in my candles, I mean, people have always asked, oh, can you make an orange candle or a grapefruit candle? And I said, not naturally, because when you burn citrus oils in the presence of ozone, which could be anywhere, really, I mean, more in the city environment, but you burn a citrus oil in ozone and you will create formaldehyde. So I shy away from those. I mean, there's little bits and pieces of natural citrus in some of my candles, but I'm really leaning towards more of the safe synthetics in that area for that reason. So that's the fun of it for me, is the chemistry behind it and really diving into every ingredient. And again, telling people just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. Like I had told you earlier, you know, like lead is a natural occurring element, and it's a neurotoxin. So you just have to be careful and understand the application. You know, I even put on my eucalyptus candles on the website a disclosure, like eucalyptus is not dog friendly and cat friendly. So if you have a eucalyptus candle that's natural eucalyptus, make sure you can open windows and allow the dogs and cats to leave the room, because they don't like eucalyptus. And specific to cats, their livers can't process peppermint or eucalyptus. You know, if they end up licking one of my candles, which I doubt they would, but that's a toxin to cats. So you have to be aware of every ingredient and really where it falls on the spectrum of safe and you know, the applications of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And just, okay, so staying with this topic for another minute here before we switch over to the benefits of the essential oils.
Yeah.
You were talking about, so you also look at the volatile organic compounds, also known as, or the short name for that, of course, is VOCs,
Right.
and some other things, and about how these essential oils are breaking down when they're heated, which is so important. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that specifically? And here we can get into the rest of the candle as well, like the wax that you use and your wicks.
Yep. It's a great question, because again, here's another term that I think people immediately think is negative, right? So a VOC, a volatile organic compound, is a compound that at, you know, ambient air temperature will release vapors, right? So it's, I think it's called, like, it has a high vapor pressure, low vapor pressure. There's all the science behind it, but effectively, VOCs occur very naturally. You know, a pine forest is giving off VOCs from the natural pine leaves, pine needles, you know, that whole thing. A flower, a rose, the reason you smell it is the VOC coming off of it. It's the scent, it's the essential scent. But then when you look into the industrial man-made VOCs, in paint thinners and solvents, industrial solvents, that kind of thing, those are the bad guys. Right. So those are the, you know, the benzenes, the toluenes, the formaldehydes, those type of chemicals, which again do occur naturally, but in much lower doses than you find in the man-made industrial solvents and things like that. So when we talk about VOCs, I like people to understand that there are natural ones, there are man-made ones. The ones that are harmful are the ones that are kind of off-gassing from your carpeting, your shellac on your furniture, that sort of thing. The ones coming off of a candle, yeah, they're still VOCs, but they're the ones that actually give it the natural elements, the scent. So I think that the jury's still out on exactly how good or bad either can be. I mean, I do think that the industrial solvents and the paint thinners and all that, they've proven that those are carcinogenic in varying doses, right? And there are minimum thresholds. But I just like to measure my candles myself. And I have a little VOC meter that I measure the burning of various candles. And I will say, you know, in all the measurements that I've done and all the testing that I've done of the vapors coming off of my candles, some have gone into a dangerous threshold. And that's why I test that and I make sure I don't produce those, right? But all the rest that I actually make and sell are in the safe zone for that. And I'm primarily looking at formaldehyde coming off and the particulate matter. So the soot, if you will. My little meter here will test for VOCs and formaldehyde and particulate matter, both at the 2.5 and the 10 micron sizes. And I've just done varying tests against, you know, my candles versus mainstream candles. And it's just fun to see because mine are not always the healthiest because of that element of the natural combustion. So as I mentioned, the citrus oils are really the most difficult to work with. But I have been able to prove, at least in my own little, you know, controlled testing environment of my powder room of my house, that the soot coming off of mine are very, very low, almost indetectable soot. And that's a combination of the soy wax that's very clean and the cotton and paper wicks that I use and the hemp wicks that are very, very clean. So, you know, I will say though that I want people to understand just that the marketing of certain terms can be negative or positive. And it's a lot of work, but you have to dive into understanding what you're being told and where the data is coming from and that sort of thing. So not all VOCs are bad and not all natural substances are good, right? So you just have to do your own research a lot of times.
Right. And I mean, this is a point that's made constantly on the podcast for listeners who have been around for a while. I talk the same way about endocrine disrupting compounds. They can be good or bad. Like my personal opinion is everything you come into contact with on a daily basis is an endocrine disruptor. The alarm on your phone in the morning, endocrine disruption.
Exactly.
You mentioned particle size. So yeah, warning, totally geeking out on this conversation. You mentioned particle size at the 2.5 and I believe you said 2.5 and 10 micron.
Correct.
Are both of those inhalable particle sizes?
Yeah, I would say, well, I actually have to do a little bit more research because from what I've understood, a lot of the nanoparticles and a lot of like the smaller the particle, the worse it is for you because the further into your system it can get, right? So this is more, honestly, I mean, you're going to get soot off of anything you burn ever, right? I mean, well, you probably know there are potentially some compounds that wouldn't give off soot when burned in a lab or whatever, but I'm just trying to keep it to a minimum, right? So when I've burned candles with different wicks and I've burned, mainstream candles with paraffin blends and things like that, which paraffin, by the way, for people that don't know, paraffin is a petroleum byproduct. So it's it's in the same family as gasoline, but it's, they process it to create a wax. So things like that, just burning a paraffin wax, burning not a clean wick necessarily, or something that's got paraffin on it. A lot of wicks will be dipped in paraffin to burn better. But again, that's just petroleum. So those tend to have a lot more soot. And with my candles, just using the natural soy wax, that in itself, plus a very clean wick, just keeps those particles very, very low, almost indetectable. Now, I mean, if I hold this little sensor thing right over the top of any candle, it's going to start going up and up and up. But, you're never going to be that close to it. It is dissipating throughout the room. So,
right.
I want people to understand as well, combustion of anything is not healthy to inhale. That's just basic, right? But making sure if you are going to burn candles and you love candles and you have them all over your house, that you're using the cleanest version you can, right?
Okay. One more question about your candle ingredients. So can you speak a little bit to the burn or the melting temperature of your wax and how you selected that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started really kind of messing around with all different natural waxes. So the coconuts, the soys, the beeswax. And I really found that the best propagation of the scent into the wax happened with soy.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, I really would love beeswax. I mean, here in the Rocky Mountains, we've got a lot of beekeepers and there's a lot of access to good beeswax here. But it's a really hard wax. And I just couldn't get the right mixture of essential oils into it that didn't always smell a little bit like honey. So, and I do some really earthy blends like frankincense and cedar wood and thing. And when you blend that with a bit of a honey base, it just was really off. So in the end, I landed on the soy wax, which it's a very soft wax. So it starts melting at about 115 to 120 Fahrenheit. And which, believe me, scared the what out of me when I first started shipping candles to Phoenix in the summertime last year. And I was like, I was calling my clients saying, I really hope these aren't a pool of wax on your front porch when they get to you. But thankfully, I got to give props to the US Postal Service. They got everything everywhere intact and nothing melted. But yeah, so the challenge with using essential oils in any candle is that you can't add essential oils above about 123 degrees because they start to the flash points are so low that they'll just evaporate, they'll disintegrate into thin air, right? So if a lot of candles, even a lot of soy candles, when they're using all synthetic scents, they can heat the oil to, 160 to 180, and then add the synthetic scent at about 150, and then let that whole thing cool down until you pour it into the vessel. Well, you can't do that if you're using essential oils. So in a traditional candle, when they have that high wax heat, and then they can add the synthetic scent in at high temperatures, that really helps with the propagation of the scent throughout the wax. Alternatively, what I do is I can only get my wax. I heat my wax to about 160, but then I have to let it cool all the way down to 120. Then I add the essential oils and I have to stir and stir and stir and stir and stir. Because the heat element of it isn't helping to propagate anything because it's really cool at that point. I mean, you can dip your finger. It's not hot, right? It's cooling to about 110. And then I continue to stir, propagate that oil, and then I pour it at about 105 to 110. I mean, that's a hot tub. Like that's not very, very hot, but that's the challenge I face in making soy candles with essential oils is I have to be really specific about what temperature I'm getting it to when I'm adding the oils, when I'm pouring it, and I can still mess up a whole batch. If the humidity is off a particular day, or if, my dog walks in and pushes the door open and there's a big draft coming through, like all of those little teeny variables can change the whole way the candle sets, which is, frustrating as all get out when it happens.
Wow. That's, yeah, I can't imagine, but yeah.
I mean, I've gotten most of the variables pretty locked in. So I have to have the room at the right temperature, the humidity at a certain, the whole 9 yards. I've even just last week, I was thinking, I'm at 6,600 feet. I have to start looking into like, what is that doing in terms of variable? And especially when I'm doing test burns, I'm like, wow, there's actually fewer air molecules here than at sea level. So are my test burns, potentially invalid for someone who's buying one in New York City? It's, there's so many people are always like, Jill, it's just a candle. Like, how hard can it be? And I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
Well, that's for, okay. for myself, because I've tried pouring up my own candles before, and it is such a pain in the butt because inevitably they draw away from the wall. They don't
Yep.
make the nice even top, and they don't what word am I looking for? They
They
don't
don't,
stick to
they
the
don't cure well. They don't,
yeah.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And believe me, I've been doing this almost, well, let's see, 2.5 years now. When I first started, I mean, I was like, I'm never going to figure this out. I can't understand why certain, waxes aren't sticking to the wall, or why this is creating a hole. And there's a lot of information out there for candle makers to help other candle makers, which is so funny that I say that I'm a candle maker, a chandler, if you will. But it's really just trial and error. I mean, I have spent so much money just on, test vessels and test wicks and bags of wax that didn't work out. But that's any business, yeah, it's trial and error. You have to figure out your recipes. You have to really hone them in. And I've gotten to that point now. But even now, I've got some Christmas ones that are burning in another room, just making sure they burn evenly, that, you get that good level of liquid wax pool at the top, and you don't get any mushrooming and additional soot coming off the wick. Like it's so many different variables. And it's just been trial and error for years. Yeah.
Wow. So going back to when you started, you mentioned it was because you couldn't find an essential oil candle on the market. Why was that so important for you?
Well, that goes back, oh gosh, almost 2 decades. I was living in England at the time when I was working for the bank that I recently retired from. And I grew up in Pittsburgh. We didn't have a lot of shrimp. We didn't have a lot of seafood. When I was living in England, I ended up having a really good shrimp dinner one night. And unbeknownst to me, I was allergic to shrimp. So when I woke up at 3 a.m. and felt like I'd been in a fight, my lips were swelled up, my eyes were swelled up, my cheeks, everything was swelled up. I didn't go into anaphylactic shock, thank goodness. But whatever was in that shrimp or whatever happened, and I went to many different doctors who really couldn't necessarily pinpoint it. But from that moment on, they said, number one, avoid shellfish, which I did. Duh. But number two, I started reacting to so many different things that I'd never reacted to before, like lipstick, eyeliner, moisturizer, just like regular chapstick, just things that I was using in my everyday life, my entire adult life. And then suddenly after that incident, I couldn't use them anymore. I'd be just kind of sitting at my desk at work, and I would feel my lips start to tingle, and then they would just puff up out of nowhere. So what I started doing was just researching what could be happening, what's going on. And this is 20 years ago, when clean products and clean living was really, I think, just starting to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
But Europe was actually ahead of the game in terms of ingredients and testing and things like that. So anyway, I fast forward probably about 10 years when I still couldn't wear lipstick. I couldn't wear, I was really just unable to do a lot of the things that I'd been doing just with cleaning products and whatever. So, okay, it all started to make sense that this is more of an environmental toxin thing. And for whatever reason, my immune system was triggered by the shrimp. Funny enough, that allergy has gone away. The shellfish allergy, I think, potentially because I've eliminated so many other toxins in my life that the shellfish allergy is now close to nothing. I don't necessarily like shrimp anyway, but if I want to have some crab cakes or something, I can totally do that and there's no problem. Anyway, part of that story is that in lamenting this to girlfriends of mine over the years, the one had mentioned this company that does, I don't want to say non-toxic because that's another term that's misused, but safer cosmetics and safer skincare. And I started using their products, and it really just opened my eyes to the amount of environmental chemicals we're exposed to and how hidden these ingredients are all over the place. And candles were a big part of my I don't know, just kind of the ambiance in my house and loving the fall weather and lighting my cinnamon candles and looking forward to when some of the big producers were, launching this center, that center, whatever. But then I would notice that, I was getting headaches. My eyes were watering all the time. I don't think it ever occurred to me that the candles were actually doing some of that damage. And that's when I started to think, well, hang on, if there's bad chemicals potentially in lipsticks and skincare products, what about candles? And fragrance is really one of those elements that is so, what's the word? I don't want to say unregulated, because it's not necessarily unregulated, but it's allowed to be non-disclosed, right? And I'm sure you know this in your business as well, is that fragrance as a topic, as a compound, can just be listed as fragrance on any ingredients list. So you'll see that word fragrance, parfum, perfume, whatever. But because of the FDA loophole that says it's a trade secret, you don't have to disclose it, companies can put basically whatever they want in fragrance as long as they've told you it's safe, which, how do we know that they are, right? I mean,
Right.
Anyway, to answer your question, I mean, when I started digging into the fragrance topic, that's when I went, you know what? There are no candles out there that I would like to burn that I know the ingredients of. I couldn't get it. I'm not going to name names, but some of the major producers, I was emailing them, hey, give us your ingredients list. Actually, that's a trade secret. We're not going to disclose it. That was a huge warning bell for me when I couldn't even get the information. So, and I get it. I mean, if you've got the recipe for Coke, you don't want to tell people what's in Coca-Cola, right? That's a trade secret. You don't have to disclose it. But because fragrance can be so many hundreds of chemicals, I don't know. I wanted to be completely transparent with my clients and say, here's exactly what's in it. If you're allergic to peppermint, you're allergic to peppermint. You don't want to buy one of these candles. Or if you're allergic to whatever, cedarwood, but at least you know what's in it. And so that's what got me into the candle business a total 180 from my previous life.
Can you talk a little bit about your previous life?
Absolutely. Sorry, while I take a sip of tea. So I basically got my degree in industrial engineering many, many years ago. And I worked for General Motors, and I worked for a couple consulting gigs with IT stuff. And then this was sort of when banks were just starting to go online with, websites, mobile banking, online banking, that kind of thing. And I went over to a major credit card bank and did a lot of their setup for online banking. And so I was basically doing just all sorts of IT stuff for a very, very long time. And then went into a lot of just kind of site choice, site real estate type project management stuff for the same bank. So I went really from like hardcore engineering, working on a line, working on ignition cables at General Motors, into IT, and then into banking, and then into more traditional project management stuff. And that took me to England, as I said, and basically just had a wonderful career in the banking industry. And then probably about 2 or 3 years ago, they were looking to consolidate a lot of us senior management into headquarters. Again, I won't go into, it's on the East Coast, it's a headquarter. And I was already living in Aspen, and they were like, why don't you move to headquarters? And I'm like, what are my other options? And they said, well, you qualify for retirement. So if you want to retire, you can retire. And I said, all right, I think I'll take option B and I'm going to retire. Left the banking world, left the engineering world. And, I took like a 3-month break and I did all the things in Aspen that I'd wanted to do, like go to lunch with friends and, do the hiking trails in the middle of the day on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after 3 months, I was like, okay, I need to do something. And that's when I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to do this candle thing, and it's time I did it for real. Right. So that's when I launched Aspen Clean Candle. And yeah, people still, they laugh because they're like, wait, you're an engineer and you're making candles? I'm like, well, who better to do that than a chemist or an engineer? Like, we need to know what's in these things. And it's just been fun. It's been terrifying. I don't know what the hell I'm doing half the time running a business. I have to be the accountant. I have to be the social media manager. I have to be the production line. It's just me. I'm new and I'm just getting my, feet under me. And I would love to have a big, production space and a factory and employees and have a lot of fun with that. And I'll get there. But at the moment, it's just me. So I got to do everything. And I'm like, how do people do this? How do people run businesses when, they're the technician and they're, I'm HR, I'm the accountant, I'm everything. So it's been a huge learning experience to start my own company, run my own company. But I tell you, it's a joy waking up every day and thinking about what I can do and who I can meet, and the relationships that I build with my clients, and just really having a good time with it.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Moving back over into the candles, because one of the things we haven't talked about yet is the aromatherapy aspect of these essential oils. So, and I love what you shared about, you were really looking for a clean candle to burn and moving away from some of the everyday toxins, both in our diet and in our environment, like just around us. So, but if we could talk about the aromatherapy aspect of it.
Yeah, well, the aromatherapy, I think, I don't know, I've read before that, our sense of smell is the most memory invoking and the most, I would say, acute, just in terms of saying, this smells just like my grandmother's living room, or, oh, this smells like my mom's perfume when I was 10. You can pinpoint those fragrances to something, somewhere, someone, right? I think that's beautiful. And I think for me, scent is a mood booster beyond anything else. If I walk into a house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, that's just, yeah. So in terms of the benefits of essential oils, I mean, there's so much data there, just from topical applications to aromatherapy, really helping to wake you up, helping to calm you down, those types of things. So I just, honestly, when I first started the business, I was playing around with the scents that I like the best, right? So I love cinnamons. I love peppermints. I love the earthy stuff too, the cedar woods, the real kind of mossy, like wet leaf kind of smell. And I just played around with blends, so that's why the line that I first created was all more, what's the word? Not ethereal, but, I don't have candles that say, cinnamon and spice. I have a candle called Breathe, right? I have a candle called Pray. I have a candle called Love. So, and I've tailored those blends to sort of evoke that feeling when you're smelling it. So the Love candle, for instance, is a warm clove and an ylang ylang. So it's kind of sensual, it's kind of warm, it's kind of spicy, right? The Breathe candle, which is my best seller, which it cracks me up because it's so simple and so basic. And I'm like, man, of all the blends that I did, this was the easiest. Turns out simplicity sells. The Breathe candle is just, it's a lemongrass and a eucalyptus. And that combination is just very, it just makes you want to open your lungs. And it's very energizing. So just trial and error again has been really how I've come up with a lot of these different blends. And I'm always tailoring them too. I mean, someone will say, "Ooh, I'd love a little more sandalwood in this," or maybe if you put a little bit more frankincense over here, or a little bit more cedarwood in. And so I'm always readjusting, but the basics are there. That the candle I do called Rest. It's just very calming. It's got the cedarwood. It's got the Palo Santos, that's the Prey one with the sacred woods. The Rest, just it makes you want to just chill out, like take a breather, right? So that's been fun. I wouldn't say, I'm not necessarily selling them as, here's what you should light when you're studying. Here's what you should light when you're trying to go to sleep. It's really, it could be different for everybody, but and again, it's a candle. It's not something you're actually applying topically for, the actual benefits of whatever the essential oil would be. Specifically, this is being diffused into the air very minutely. But if you feel better, then I did my job.
I love that. Jill, is there anything else that you'd like to talk? And is your mug one of your candle holders?
Oh, yeah, that's the point. This is, oh my gosh, a labor of love. I don't know if this is actually
that's so beautiful. Oh, that's pretty.
Isn't it gorgeous? So my
is.
friend, I had a friend out of Denver who knew a potter in Pueblo.
Okay.
And she and I met a few years ago, and she is now hand making every single one of these vessels for me. I do a big one, and then I do a smaller one. So one has like a gold stripe, one has the blue gray stripe, but the intention as part of my whole company is really reusable, recyclable, sustainable, right? So from the soy wax to the essential oils to the vessels, I want to be very mindful about it. So when you're done with your candle, you can use it as a coffee mug or a teacup. And it's all, dishwasher safe and food grade and all of that. But yeah, she puts that little stamp on the bottom. And yeah, so they're all handmade by a gal out of Pueblo, who is a dear. But yeah, so I have a whole set of them. So I tell people, I'm like, yeah, buy 6 candles and you got a set of coffee mugs when you're done. Yep. And I go so far as to, on the top, I put a dust cover.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
The dust cover just has my logo, and it just talks about, soy wax, essential oils, but it's embedded with wildflower seeds.
Okay.
So you take this and you plant it in the ground, and you have daisies and cosmos, and you have beautiful flowers. So I want everything to be, reusable and not a burden on our waste. So yeah, good catch. You've seen me drinking out of my little ceramic mug. Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the things you envision offering, are refill kits for the candles at some point?
That's a great question, because I've always thought, locally here, people will bring their vessels back to me and I refill them, and I give them like $3 off each candle that we do that for. But thinking about doing that remotely, where people have to ship things back to me, I do think the carbon footprint of shipping things back to me is a little too much versus just reusing it.
So what I've seen before is where you can order the block of wax that already has the essential oil included in it. Yeah. However, once you receive it, you have to heat it up to get it to fit into the vessel. Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about that too, because funny enough, just yesterday, my cousin out in Cincinnati, she texted me. She's like, I got my whole shipment of candles. She's like, the one ceramic piece did crack in transit. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to send you a whole other candle, number one, but I'm going to send you a vessel to just plot that hard wax. So just,
Okay.
throw away the other one that shattered and just put the chunk of wax with the wick already in it in this new vessel.
Yeah.
So it's the timely that you're bringing that up today, because I thought, well, there's a way that I could then just ship the hard wax piece with the wick already in. So basically a candle with no vessel, and then they can drop it in when they get there. The challenge at the moment is these are all handmade, so they're not, the tolerances are off, right? I can't guarantee that it's going to fit in the next, or that the wax that I send you is going to fit in the vessel you have. But again, yeah, they could maybe heat it and then slide it in a little easier. I don't know. There's a lot to be done there, just in terms of thinking you've already got the vessel. Number one, I hope people don't throw them away because they are all reusable. But number two, how could I get it refilled for them without having to give them another vessel?
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely worth considering.
I think they would make gorgeous planters also.
Like oh yeah, I've got a couple cacti upstairs in them, and I mean, I have my toothbrush in one. I have. I'm sitting here at my desk. Here's all my pens. I mean, these are like ones that were maybe a little wonky, little uneven on the lip or something. So I'm not going to get rid of them. They're functional. They're just a little bit off. So yeah.
Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you would like to talk about?
I don't know. I hope that people, just as a society, as a country, as an earth, we're starting to really ask questions about what's in the products we're using, applying to our bodies, smelling, eating, whatever. And I think that movement is really gaining momentum, right? So I would encourage people, regardless of what the product is, just look at the ingredients. If it has an ingredients list, and if something says made with essential oils, well, that's great, but maybe 1% is essential oils and 99% is synthetic. Just understand that there's a lot of marketing jargon, right, that can try to sort of hoodwink people. And that frustrates me because believe me, I was hoodwinked for many years. When something would say made with essential oils, I assumed that meant 100%. Not even close, right? So made with soy wax or a soy wax blend, most of the time is paraffin wax with a little bit of soy. So just, as a consumer, be aggressive in your search for the truth and what are the ingredients and how might they be harmful. And it's not to scare people, but it's just, I feel better with my health because of the research I did and what I eliminated from my life and the products I was using. And I honestly, I tell people, I say the allergy that I had to shellfish is now dramatically reduced. Now that's also a natural cycle of cell turnover in your body and things like that. So I don't want to say that just because I started switching to cleaner products, I have fewer allergies, but maybe that is a byproduct of that. And just, don't be afraid to ask the questions. I love when people ask me things because I'm happy to tell them exactly what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So it's things like that. I just want people, especially with the fragrance side of things, to understand what's in the products that they're buying.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And other than that, I don't know. I can't really think of much more that I'd want to talk about other than I'm very excited to be launching my Christmas scents coming up. And if anyone has any recommendations for Christmas scents or even candle scents in general, I'm always looking for feedback. If somebody says, ooh, I want a bubblegum flavored candle. Well, I probably can't do that, but anything that's outside of what I currently offer, I'm always looking for suggestions on scent combinations, essential oil blends, something that I haven't thought of. I love that kind of feedback and that kind of suggestion from people. So anyone listening today, please shoot me an email with your favorite scent and I'll see what I can do.
And what email address is best for you?
Oh, they can just send it to Jill at aspencleancandle.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, what is the best way to find your candles?
Very good question. Yeah, at the moment, I would say online, aspencleancandle.com is my website. It's a retail. You can just take a look at everything I've got there, from fragrance, essential oil home sprays to the candles to, I'm going to be doing some like wax warmers and wax melt type of things for the holidays. I'll be putting stuff out there, but yeah, there. And then anyone who's local to Aspen or the Roaring Fork Valley here in Colorado, I sell really at like farmers markets and some of the holiday fairs and things like that. But at the moment, because my candles are all handmade, very high quality ingredients, it's really hard for me to get a price point down to wholesale where I can sell to a retailer who then doubles the price and sells it, to the public. So I'm not doing wholesale yet, just because I don't want to cheapen my product just to be able to, turn a profit at a retailer. So I'm just doing online, just doing in-person sales myself at different farmers markets and things like that.
Okay. Jill, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and how, it's obvious all of the research that you put into these candles.
Well, thanks, Brandy. It's nice to talk to someone who really understands it and gets it and can be sort of an ally with me in this movement to just, figure out what's in your stuff and try to go clean as best you can, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I do appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much for reaching out and setting this up.
Yeah. Thank you.